Today we're going to talk about Google stock. I'm currently up almost 69% on my position, and I own a total of 18 shares. I started buying Google in 2022, I believe, and I currently have a cost basis or average price of $103. If you're thinking of buying Google stock, I'd recommend watching the whole video because I'm going to talk about the good and the bad sides of the company and, what I've seen over the last 2 years of being a shareholder. And I've also been using their products for a very long time as well. So hopefully by the end of the video, you'll have a better idea whether it's the right investment for you. If you're new to the channel, my name is Sheldon, and I've been investing and managing my own portfolio for over 4 years now, and I make YouTube videos talking about stocks. So if you're looking to learn about the market and build your own portfolio, check out some of the other videos on my channel and subscribe to join me on the journey, and let's build our portfolios together. With all that out of the way, I've some articles and some numbers I want to go over, so let's get right into it. So the first thing that I want to talk about are all the reasons out there that people tell you not to buy Google stock, and basically any reason that there's selling pressure on the stock. Not that there's been much selling pressure clearly in the last year here. But also, what are the risks? What are the downsides to owning Google? That's where I want to start, and let's talk about those first. Okay, so obviously the big one, and this is the one that drives a lot of the news for Google lately and a lot of the short-term fluctuations, but they haven't been necessarily the winner of the AI race so far, and they've had a couple. It's been a little bit of a bumpy road, to say the least, for Google's AI. And there's been a few things like the Bard debut. This debuted as one of their first AI products from Google, and it was giving out incorrect information. And then they tried to rebrand it as Gemini, and then it also kind of created some questionable images, which, you can make your mind up whether this news is really affecting the foundation and the fundamentals of Google or not. Personally, I don't think it does. I think things like this blow up in the news and the media, and they affect the stock price short term, but this does not affect the underlying foundations of Google. But they haven't had the smoothest run with AI, to be completely honest, as of yet. Google Overview, this is the new one, or so the nail in the coffin, as this article states. But they've had some weird suggestions out there, like telling people to eat rocks, I guess, and use glue as pizza toppings. Like, you got to understand that these things happen with AI and technology when you're dealing with data sets that are as large as the ones they're dealing with. Things are going to happen. And I think some people struggle to understand that. So it's just something to keep in mind. This is some of the only bad news that I've been able to find on Google. There's a couple other things that we'll go over, but this is one of the main ones. So I thought it was important to touch on, and just a good thing to keep in mind when thinking about Google stock. And there's so many articles out there that you can find. A big narrative is that Google has fallen behind in the AI race. I personally don't think they have, but it's just some media and some news articles that you're definitely going to see out there. But moving on to the next one, Google's also has a lot of data, right? And they run into data leaks, data breaches. They get hacked. It's going to happen when you're dealing with a company that's the size of Google. They're going to be constantly in lawsuits, and right here they agreed to settle for $350 million over a data leak. This isn't the first time it's happened. This is not the last time it's going to happen. I know that as a shareholder. It's just kind of the way things are with these big businesses. It's a risk to keep in mind. It's going to happen. Another thing with Google and companies just as big as Google, if we go back to this page right here, like it's a $2 trillion business. There's always a risk even with companies like Meta and Apple and any company that is this big and well established in the market, that the government could step in and break up the organization to try and level the playing field for competition. I don't think it's likely to happen, but it could. That's a risk factor when holding any of these big companies, and just, again, something to keep in mind. But honestly, Google does a really good job of not having a lot of negative media around it for being such a big company. Those are just some of the things that I think are important to keep in mind. when researching the stock. You should know why there might be selling pressure against a position you own. But let's get into why I'm still bullish on the stock and why I'm still holding my shares. So, some people, they may disagree with this, but I really do believe that Google is absolutely at the top of their game when it comes to innovation and technology. Even though some of their AI projects have been a flop, they are just one of the biggest technology companies in the world. They have 180, almost 181,000 full-time employees, and a lot of those is like some of the best top engineering talent and computer science talent in the world. It's a massive company with lots of talent. They're definitely not behind in AI. At least that's what I believe. And from what I've seen, all AI tools are going to have their problems, and things are going to slip through the cracks that the company managing the language model just can't find. And that's some of the risk for creating new innovative products. Is sometimes things like that happen. I think the development power behind Google is pretty much unmatched. There's only a few companies in the world that can match the development power that Google has. Let's start to take a look at some of their financials. Their revenue growth is absolutely beast. From in 2020, they did 182 billion in revenue to just over 300, like essentially like a few years later. That's unreal. They almost doubled their revenue in a few years for a company of this size. That's absolutely phenomenal. If we take a look at their balance sheet, and Google really does have one of the best balance sheets in the world. It's crazy. And we can get into, I'll find a breakdown of their revenue by service here in a little bit, but I think this is a really important one to know. Just look at how much cash they have. 110 billion of cash on their balance sheet. That's nuts. Not a lot of business, if any business has that. I don't know. But they have just over 4 billion in total assets. Their total liabilities is 120 billion, so they can almost pay off all their total liabilities with just the cash on their balance sheet. That's crazy. Not a lot of companies can do that. This is an absolutely 5-star balance sheet. Props to Google. Not easy to get here. If we look at some of the other statistics, obviously $2 trillion market cap on the company. Forward PE is coming down. So the stock could be getting cheaper here in the next little while. Forward PE is just based off analyst estimates. So it could be getting cheaper, could come down the valuation, which, also just might present a buying opportunity, which would be interesting. Profit margin, 25%. Again, it's similar to, I think Meta has around a 30% profit margin, which is why I hold Google and Meta, because they're just so damn profitable. It's hard to not own these stocks, guys. I mean, come on. The revenue is crazy, 300 billion, fucking unheard of. And then we can look at their total cash to debt. They can pay off their debt 4 times over almost, 4 times over. That's crazy. They have so much cash. Financially, they're in a perfect, really phenomenal position. It's pretty unreal, actually, their balance sheet and the financial position that they're in. And it just proves that they'll be able to innovate. They'll be able to keep up with competitors. Even if some competitors are, they're able to move faster. There's less red tape in smaller companies. But, just the cash and then their ability to hold some of the best talent in the world at Google. A combination of those things is the reason why I'm still bullish on this stock, why I haven't sold my shares. And if the stock price dips here in the short term, I could still continue to be a buyer for sure. I also want to look at some YouTube statistics here. I think this is interesting because obviously Google owns YouTube. They also own Fitbit, which I didn't even really know that until I started doing some research for this video. But they own Fitbit. I guess that's kind of cool. YouTube, obviously, everybody's watching this video on YouTube. Everybody knows the power of YouTube. It's huge. They have just over 2.7 billion accounts created on YouTube. And then I think here it says 868 million active users. Projected to reach 1 billion active users, which, that's crazy. 1 billion active users on one single app is unreal. YouTube has 100 million plus paid subscribers. I use YouTube Premium. So they're getting my money on that. I think it's worth it. I don't love watching ads, and I spend a lot of time on YouTube, so I'm willing to spend the money for YouTube Premium, and I use YouTube Music as well. So yeah, just some really crazy numbers here on YouTube. I think it's a phenomenal platform. In 2023, YouTube's brand value increased to almost $30 billion, which look at that growth rate of just Google. Almost $7 billion-ish roughly from year over year. 12% increase in global advertising revenue. Just some really crazy numbers coming out of YouTube. It's a platform that I believe in. It steps away from some of that mainstream media and gives the power for content creators to build their own platform. Another really big part of their revenue is their cloud platform. It's not as big as AWS. They have a much smaller cloud platform. But I mean, it's hard to really show what all these do. Like, there is a million services when it comes to GCP, AWS, Microsoft Azure. All these cloud platforms can do a million different things, industry solutions, application modernization, artificial intelligence. There's just a million things to do. And I work in the data management industry, and I know that Google is one of the big three cloud providers. When things come in the news, though, and it's like data breach, data leak from Google, people definitely look at their cloud platform and think maybe it's not as secure as some of the other ones, so that's a risk to keep in mind. But this is an absolute profit machine, high margin business, Google Cloud. Once you have all the infrastructure put in place, that's a large part of starting a cloud-based business is getting your data centers, expanding on your data centers, and then you obviously have to maintain them as well. But this is a really high margin business, and Google Cloud is growing. So between YouTube, Google Cloud, Google Drive, Gmail, Fitbit, what are some other Google businesses that I'm forgetting? But you get the point. They own a lot of massive businesses that are revenue beasts, and at the end of the day, they make most of their money off revenue, right? Like, a large portion of their revenue is pretty much all from advertising. So that's how they make their money. But let's dive in and take a look at my personal position in Google. It's currently sitting at 173 at the time of recording this video. I own 18 shares at an average of $1 or $103, sorry, with a market value of just over $3,000, and I'm up almost 69% on the shares. I don't see myself buying any shares now. Even if I will if it really does crash. If it goes down into the 150s, back to the 140s, then I could definitely see myself adding to the position. But if we go back to my portfolio quick, so if we take a look at my top 4 positions, obviously VOO is 30%, Meta, Palantir, Google, all roughly around 10, 11, 12%. The only problem with adding more Google shares is I kind of need to start working towards diversifying the top 3 positions in my portfolio. Obviously, these are all very development heavy, even Apple, all AI based, and they kind of just grew into this position because they've seen some pretty good returns on these positions. They grew into the bigger positions in my portfolio. But I don't want to sell them. I don't want to sell any of these. So in order to rebalance this, I might bring positions like Nike, JP Morgan back into the top, just by adding in money and buying shares into those companies. But one thing I need to keep in mind is I don't want to get way overweighted on just technology, which is too bad because, I love tech stocks. But it's a comfortable position, 10% of my portfolio. It's gone on a long run. It's gone on a pretty good run, 69% since I started buying. And I'm going to continue to hold the shares for sure. I'll be a happy shareholder until I see something fundamental in the business of Google change. I don't think they're going to really lose market share anytime soon to a lot of these smaller, more competitive, faster-moving startups and faster-moving companies. I think they're very well established, just like Nike. Google is a household name. Everybody knows what Google is. Will they lose market share further into the future when people go to things like ChatGPT to find information instead of Google search? Maybe. You know, that's a risk factor for sure. It's possible. And that being said, you know, I could be wrong with all this. I could be completely wrong and Google could go back down to $60 in the next year. I'm just here to tell you what I kind of think. I've been a shareholder and managing these stocks for a while now. But I could be wrong. This is, at the end of the day, just my opinion. Don't go out and buy Google just because I'm saying I own it and I think it's a good stock to own. So yeah, that's a pretty quick summary on, you know, what I think some of the risk factors for owning Google is, and also what are the reasons that I like the company and why it's in my top 4 positions in my whole portfolio and will probably continue to stay that way. If you got any value out of the video, please consider dropping a like, subscribing to the channel for more content. If you have any stocks or any positions that you want to see videos on, let me know. Drop them in the comments below. I hope you guys all have an awesome day. Peace out.